Okay. Yo, what is up, YouTube? Um, I've been a while since I made some videos, and I think obviously the last ones we were making was tech. And then now I think we're going to talk about God. So I'm not exactly sure how to do that in the right way. Candidly, it's been a little bit of time before, or it's been a little time since I've made videos like this and or made videos about God really in general. And so I think the elephant in the room for me is like, I don't want to be some random dude that gets on the internet and talks about God. Every time I come across people, it's like pretty rare to find somebody who feels genuinely like talking about the Lord in, you know, or God or Jesus or whatever your, vernacular is in a genuine way that feels like I can attach to this person as a human. Because most of the time it just I don't know, like I'm not trying to throw shade on the church or like Christians or anything like that. But a lot of times, what ends up feels like when I spend time with like Christians or whatever it may be, is I just feel this like deep inauthenticity where it becomes this routine behavior and conversation from them around what it looks like to be Christian, but a lot of times, like I'm missing that excited, genuine feeling where they're like, God is doing something in my life, and I have a personal relationship, and He's genuinely changed me in a way that feels so authentic and exciting that I'm excited to talk about it. And I think, even in my own life, I've lost a little bit of that, candidly. Because, in the beginning, I was super excited to talk about the Lord, and lately, like it's a little less on the excited side. Sorry about the greasy hair. Um, and more like kind of tripping my way through this thing. And one thing I don't want to do is come up here and make a bunch of videos and be like, ah man, like God, 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 and misrepresent like who I am and how I'm feeling. Because I feel like what it does for you guys or anybody who's actually like listening and participating in this stuff is it becomes this like unreal expectation of what it looks like to be a Christian. And I think there's some things, and I want to go into my testimony a little bit, not too much, but man, I'll share like a deeper version. But I think what ends up happening is, um, what I want to say is with Paul in the New Testament, Paul is chosen to basically get up with the Holy Spirit, and say that, after the Holy Spirit comes, he talks to the crowd and has this, he's like, hey, we're not drunk as we suppose, yada, 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 and says all this stuff. And I'm going to poorly paraphrase some things, but I just want to use this analogy to explain, or use this example to explain, how I feel about my own life at times. And Paul just denies Jesus three times before this. And he's like humiliated. He's running away. He won't even claim the guy who saved his very life. And on just the very next step, he's the person who's the mouthpiece of the whole movement. And it just feels like, if Paul is going to, or if Peter's going to be the mouthpiece of the movement, but also be the one that denies Jesus, like there's something to say about not being perfect. And I'm not saying like don't be perfect so that you can be an example, but Paul even says I was chosen as an example. And I think I'm an example, not because I do everything right, but because I almost candidly do everything wrong. I know I should read the Bible each day, yet I don't feel like it, nor do I want to do it. When I pray, oftentimes I'll tell the Lord, I don't really feel like praying, nor do I necessarily feel like reading my Bible. I never represent who I'm trying to be, I represent where I'm at. And what I've noticed is like God has always met me exactly where I was instead of where I tried to pretend to be. And I think that's the thing that I'm craving is like some authenticity from Christians for them to just be like, yeah, dude, I like mess up all the time. I'm this and I'm that and I'm yada, yada, yada. And God is still filling that place. And I'm not talking about like complacency, and I have a little bit of that. I'm not talking about like being complacent and just being like, I'm gonna live however I want to live, and then, use God's name as a key word in my life, but not necessarily have like any induce of change and like want to actually live a life towards God and change my life and change others' lives, hopefully. And I think That's where I'm at. And there's a little bit of complacency in my life, candidly. I'm kind of getting into the motions of being like financially secure and not having like to read the Bible all the time. And like one thing I've noticed in my own life, and I'll stop, you know, going on about this, but um, is the less that I have oh crap moments, the less that I'm trying to talk to the Lord. And I think what that's turned into is where he is a 911 helpline, which he should be. And I think if I had to think in place of God, I'd be happy to help when I got the opportunity. But I don't think that's a good relationship. And so I say that all to say, um, that's a little bit of backdrop. Expectations around this channel, I'm just going to be bluntly honest about my life. Pitfalls, problems, high points, low points, where my mind is at, insecurities, all that stuff, and not necessarily be afraid of the dirtier parts of my life, and not try to hamper and hold on to the perception of who I am, but let you see the reality of who I am. And I think that that reality often offers more hope. And to take 2 minutes and explain my background, when I was 18, started using marijuana. And I think within a 5 to 6 year period, I got introduced to Oxycontin. Then after Oxycontin, I got introduced to Vicodin, and then slowly over a period of time, fell into heroin. After 2 years of heroin, um, my friends had passed away. One died behind a dumpster. One died in the living room. Um, one ended up passing away. I think another one was on a living room on a couch. And so everybody was dying around me. And I remember I was driving to St. Louis to pick up heroin, and I was like, God, if you're real, I need you. And in that moment, I remember nothing happened. I just kind of reached out to the Lord and I was like, if you're real, God, I need help right now. And nothing happened in that moment. But about a month later, I remember thinking I had gone and I had stolen my dad's truck so that I could go pick up heroin. And at this point, 5 to 6 years in, like you're pretty low on trust with the people around people around you. Because you've really like you've lied and you've cheated and you've stole you stole as much as you could. And so I'm pretty low on trust. And so my parents like publicly hang the keys to the vehicles in our home in a public place in the living room. They didn't put them in like side places so that if like I ever needed to try to get the car, I had to go in the living room where everybody was and they would like publicly see me trying to take the car. Like trust was very low. And I think so I had stolen his truck and gone out, and this was kind of like a breaking moment. I think this just goes to show like the power of believing in somebody. And I stole his truck, picked up a drug dealer named D. He had money symbols shaved into the side of his head. He was 20 years my senior, and I'm coming back after picking up heroin, and my dad texts me, and he goes, "Hey Charles, somebody stole my truck. Can you come help me look for it?" And I remember reading that text while I was driving, and I just like dropped my head. And I felt such a sense of betrayal towards him and that like I had missed it. And there was something in that moment when he didn't say, "You stole my truck," after 6 years, that just broke in me. And I was just like, ugh. And I remember thinking in that moment, I was like, I need to go to Go. And Go was a program that was basically it was like a ministry program where they have like a internship, which is like a recovering intern. You go, you deal with your drug problem, all that stuff. And I was like, I need to go to Go. And so I came back to the house and I was like, Dad, like I took your truck. I need to go to Go, yada, yada, yada. And he rode me for a month. My dad was like, you're gonna go, you're gonna go, you're gonna go. And I remember thinking I owed people money. And I was like, I don't want to go owing people money. And so I ended up buying a bunch of drugs, drug dealing, making enough money to pay all the people back that I needed to, and then going down to this ministry program. And at this point, I don't know anything about God. I've never opened the Bible. When I did, it felt archaic. Both my parents were pastors, background. Um, and so I'm hitting I'm hitting all the stereotypes here. And I go down to the ministry school. I remember on the way down there, and I'll spare all the details. Throughout these videos, I'll share more, guys, about some of the like nuance and some of the wild stuff that was happening. I think I don't want to share a gruesome story, but I do want to share a very stark story because I feel like in the starkness, there's such testimony. When you try to skirt over the really hard parts and you try to make it the testimony not like exactly as it was, people end up like, I don't know, like there's just something about looking at somebody who had nothing and was at the end of his rope and had messed up so much and being like, God can do something in this person's life, he can do it in mine. And yeah, so long story short, I'm going down to this ministry program to get free from drugs. I have a 10 hit of LSD in my wallet and I've got some cigarettes. And I remember my dad never let me smoke around him. He hated the whole drug thing, yada yada yada. So we're on the way to this program and I got my arm out the window and wind's in my face. And I remember looking at my dad and I was like, Dad, it's gonna be the last chance for this. Do you mind if I smoke a cigarette? And he just like looked at me and he was like, yeah. And I remember there was just such so much respect in that moment. I just like lit it, and that cigarette was the best cigarette of my life. No, I'm joking. At the time, it felt like it. Obviously, no cigarette is probably the best in your life, but at that time, it was the most satisfying um, father acceptance cigarette of my life. And went to the program 2 months later, got clean from heroin, and there was a bunch of little stuff. Like I tried opium poppies, I tried like kratom. I was like, "Is this okay?" During like a 2 to 3 year period. And I was kind of like testing the waters, like what's okay, what's not okay. Is caffeine okay? I stopped caffeine altogether. I didn't do beta alanine from pre-workout because it made me tingle, and I was like, is this a drug? Like, am I? And I really was like trying to figure out, where's my conviction? Where do I feel okay, and where do I not feel okay with the things around me? And so, yeah, that started like a 3 year journey, and within 2 months, heroin like cravings had gone completely. I still tested the waters, like I said, but the cravings were gone. The thing that was really tough to break was pornography. It took like 3 years. And to be honest, it was just 3 years of me holding on to it. And I think to this day, I'm not perfect, okay? But pornography free, like straight up looking at porn, like that whole thing, I think I'm 7 years, 5 to 7 years, like totally free. I'm not saying I haven't scrolled through a timeline and looked at a bikini for too long. Like I'm not, I was about to say every guy has. Maybe they haven't. Okay. And I've been very honest. I'm married now for 5 years, and any times that I've had that happen, I've gone to my wife and shared those with her and been a man about it. Like one thing the Lord told me, and this I'll wrap this all up, but He told me, Charles, if you can't have character in your decisions, have character in your honesty. And he goes, just because you made the wrong decision doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have character in this moment. And I remember that hit me so hard, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, I'm actively failing and making the wrong decisions, not falling. People do this all the time. Like, I fell into Pinocchio. Bro, you didn't you didn't fall into anything, dog. Like you went and looked at something because you like it. And I remember telling the Lord that, it took me a long time to admit to myself because in the beginning I was like, Lord, I fell. I didn't want to. Oh man. And it took me a while, and I started praying to the Lord. I said, Lord, I didn't fall. I wanted to look at boobs. I wanted to look at porn. I wanted to look at all this stuff. And that totally changed the directory of my life because I started taking responsibility. I think, I don't want to, I won't touch on this now, but we'll touch on it later. Um, so anyway, this is kind of all over the place. I'm like a rat with some cheese in like 10 places. I'm knocking it on. So anyway, I'm excited to make this channel, guys. I'm Charles, 34 years old. I have one kid, one on the way, married for 5 to 7 years, was a heroin addict for two. And I'm the CEO of one company, COO of another company, and God has so blessed my life. And I'm a top 1% person by finance right now and what we make per year. And candidly, I just want to tell you guys that God can do anything out of a life. You know, um, this is just a testimony, okay? Not a flex. And if you guys feel like it is, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me how you feel about me. But um, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, I was stealing receipts out of Walmart trash cans so that I could go in the store and return the items for a $50 gift card and then use that $50 gift card to get a 70% value at a gift card place in St. Louis so that I could buy heroin. And a month and a half ago, I bought a Rolex for $7,000. And the crazy part to me is this didn't take me any savings. This is just right out of a monthly, what I made in a month. And however people feel about that, I don't care. And when I look at this watch, it tells me that God can do anything, anything. Has whatever feelings that you have around your life about what God can do or where you're at, like if it's not that God can do anything for anybody at any point in time, and he can take the guy who betrayed everybody in his life, lied to everyone, stole from everybody, and turn him into something, you're just flat wrong. You're just wrong. So, anyway, this channel is devoted to what God does in and through my life and the lives of the people around me. I have no idea what the content is going to be like, but I hope that it's a blessing to all of you. And my hope is that I can be open and honest enough that you can, share this journey with me, whether it's going to be highs and lows, and I'm sure we'll share both. And, share trust through a camera, have a community of people that are excited to get to know God in a real way. And that's all there is to it. I love you guys, and we'll talk soon, yeah?